Blessings, beloveds. Today I'm going to take some time to talk about the divine feminine principle that's reflected astrologically through the birth chart. The divine feminine has many faces, many facets, many aspects, many expressions that are experienced and seen collectively in many, many different ways. Through the birth chart, the main feminine principles, as I've briefly touched on in previous videos, is the moon, Venus, the 4 asteroids, which is actually what I'm going to focus on today. The 4 main asteroids are Ceres, Juno, Pallas, Athena, and Vesta. There are over 40,000 asteroids. Well, in fact, there's hundreds of thousands of them, but there's a majority of 40,000 that are known and used, you could say. That sounds really overwhelming, doesn't it? Can you imagine a birth chart with so many asteroids in there? It would just, everything would get quite lost. So naturally, nobody in their right mind, I don't think, would use so many asteroids. The point is this, that every single name you can think of, potentially, can be found as an asteroid. For example, there's an asteroid called Anastasia, there's an asteroid called Achilles, which was my father's name, and that particular asteroid in my own horoscope chart is conjunct my ascendant. So the asteroid Achilles is right on my ascendant, which really describes the incredible bond and special connection and relationship I've had with him this lifetime and many, many other lifetimes as well. And I did mention in a previous video that when we have an encounter let me reframe that. When we have a connection with somebody, a very important connection, and it doesn't matter what the style of the relationship is, because in my case, Achilles played the role of my father this lifetime, and in other lifetimes I've had different experiences with him. But the point is that when we have a really powerful connection with someone, whether it's a family member or whether it's a friend, or whether it's a lover, you are more than likely able to find an asteroid of that person's name actually in a very prominent space in your own horoscope, your own birth chart. So as I said, today I wanted to focus on the 4 main asteroids, but I'll probably only actually really talk about 2, and then do a subsequent video later on about the other 2. So today I'm going to talk about Pallas, Athena, and Ceres, who's also known as Demeter. Demeter is the Greek name. So in the astrological names of the planets and the asteroids, we have the Greek names and we have the Roman names, and depending on what you are reading, what book you are reading, these planets and these asteroids, planets being the gods and the goddesses from the Olympian era, will be referred to either through the Roman or the Greek name. So that's just an interesting thing to be aware of, because it may create confusion for people who don't know that there are Greek and Roman names, but essentially the Greek and Roman name is referring to the same one god or goddess. Now, the divine feminine principle, as we all know, has really been suppressed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And one other point I haven't mentioned, which is not an asteroid, it's an actual point in the birth chart, is the dark moon Lilith. So you can find 3 different Liliths in the birth chart. One actually is an asteroid. One is a point, a mathematical calculated point, and the other one is actually called the Black Moon Lilith because it's the moon's shadow. So when you look into the history of that, Lilith was the original first wife of Adam, as in Adam and Eve, the story that emerges from the Bible. And Lilith was a very independent, fierce, feminine quality and principle and energy within her own self. So when she married Adam, Adam wanted her to basically step down and be submissive to him, so to be subservient. And Lilith just wasn't going to have that. So long story short, she got cast out of the Garden of Eden, so to speak. And she was subsequently named a devil and an evil force and things of that nature. I'm mentioning that because, you know, all these things are interlinked and interconnected, meaning that divine feminine and the fact that it's been suppressed for so many years. But certainly I think we can all identify and see that in the times of now particularly, the divine feminine and the feminine principle is emerging and rising stronger and stronger and stronger on many different levels, collectively, personally, in systems and structures and things of that nature. It's taking a long time, but it is coming back through. And I think it's really seen very clearly through spiritual work, particularly. But Lilith aside, because I wasn't really going to talk about her today, and she's just sort of come in, I guess because she's also an aspect of the divine feminine, but perhaps seen in a very different light. And, well, she's seen in a very dark way, actually. But she's very, very important in our horoscope chart because she really shows where this particular, whose ever chart we are looking at, Lilith will point to the area of life where this person stands up for themselves, basically, is not prepared to be subordinate to others, will speak up for themselves and will fight for justice and equality, because that's really all Lilith wanted. She just wanted to be equal to Adam. She didn't want to be below him. Anyway, that aside again, so I'll just go back to the 4 main asteroids that I'm going to present today. So as I said, it's Vesta, Ceres, Juno and Pallas Athena. And I'll start talking about Pallas Athena. She's one of my favorite goddesses, and she's actually quite prominent in my own birth chart. Perhaps that's why I feel such a resonance with her energy, aside from the fact that I'm Greek. And Pallas Athena, you know, she's obviously a Greek goddess. So if you think about your birth chart in terms of the mind function, which is essentially described through the sign Gemini and Sagittarius, and the planets Mercury and Uranus. So Gemini is the left brain, lower mind, if you like, and Sagittarius is the right brain, higher aspect of our conceptual sphere, where we will access wisdom, intuition, philosophy, things of that nature. Now, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and the 3rd house. The 3rd house is the Gemini house, and the 9th house is the Sagittarius house. So Mercury rules Gemini, so when we're looking at the thinking faculty, the thinking function in a human being, we're looking at the sign Gemini and we're looking at Mercury. Now, not everyone has Mercury in Gemini, clearly. So whatever sign somebody's Mercury is in, that's really going to describe how that person processes intellectual data, how they learn, what thinking style they have, how they process information, how they communicate it and share it. So, you know, whatever sign Mercury is in, whatever house Mercury is in, and whatever aspects Mercury has to itself in your birth chart will all be part of the story of what your Mercury, how your Mercury functions, I should say, within you. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, meaning Uranus connects to similar to the Sagittarian energy and principle of the right brain being the intuition. So Uranus will bring about that energy of, you know, sudden flashes of insight, sudden knowledge, innovative ideas and knowledge, massive intuition, clairvoyant psychic abilities. It's just plugged in to a realm that is not very easily accessible to many people, but somebody who, for instance, has a really prominent Uranus or Uranus, as some people pronounce it, in their birth chart, particularly if it's aspecting their Mercury, that's going to describe how this person operates on a mental level, and what sort of information they're downloading from the gods. So this is important because Pallas Athena is another version of the mind. However, she's the feminine principle, the divine feminine principle. And just in terms of her mythology, she's actually the daughter of Zeus, which is the planet Jupiter. And she was a virgin, so in order for her to take on this goddess warrior role that she took on, she had to remain a virgin. And she was actually born out of Zeus's head, out of his forehead, literally. Hence, Zeus being Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, Pallas Athena being born out of his head has been born with this unlimited wisdom, if you like, which comes from her father, a patriarchal line, but nevertheless she's female, she's a goddess. She's a goddess of many, many different things, and I'm just about to start touching on some of these. Now, why is she important in our birth chart? She's important because she shows where our creative intelligence emerges, or how we can tap into it. And again, of course, like I mentioned with Mercury, whatever sign Pallas Athena is in, whatever house she's in, and whatever aspects she has to her from other planets will describe how she's expressing in your life, in your birth chart, through your mind, basically. So, she's connected to wisdom. She's connected to equality and justice. She's connected to the Akashic records, if anyone is interested in that or believes in that. She's connected to political activism, creative intelligence, creative visualization. She's connected to the healing arts, to the creative arts. So healing arts would be healers who work with, for instance, color, music, so art therapy, sound, visualization, such as, you know, meditations, affirmations, things of that nature. Someone who's got a really strong Pallas would be really great at tapping into using the language to express and articulate visual I suppose visual wisdom, visual psychic powers. It's about drawing that energy in and actually being able to communicate it, because Pallas Athena is part of how our mind functions. The creative intelligence but all the different facets of her will be ultimately communicated through the verbal sense of communication and language. So things, as I said, things like meditation, visualization, art therapy, music, all those healing types of things, very much associated with Pallas Athena. Psychology as well, so various approaches in psychology such as Gestalt, psychodrama, things of that nature, again very much connected to Pallas Athena. Hypnosis, Kundalini energy. There's quite a lot actually. I've only just made a few points just to prompt myself, but there's actually a lot there to understand about Pallas Athena and what she brings to us. So it's she can bring through potentially that genius quality of very clear perception. That is it's way beyond the mercurial Gemini level of intelligence and thinking and perceiving. As I said, she was born from Jupiter's forehead, so she was born from the god of wisdom, from his head. I think that's a pretty significant point. So look, in our own birth charts, she's going to really represent where our creative intelligence has potential, where we feel we may also fight for justice and equality, because she was a fighter. She was a political activist, so she fought for justice and equality and all those sorts of things. Another interesting thing about her is that she can really show up with some complexities relating to a father and daughter relationship as well, because she was born of Zeus, and so that father-daughter relationship can sometimes be quite complex, and that would really come through perhaps stressful aspects, so challenging aspects. So if Pallas Athene was having a difficult aspect to Jupiter or to Saturn or something like that, she was in a difficult sign, difficult house, those sorts of things, it would show the struggle of that person's own ability to tap into their creative intelligence. Doesn't mean it's not there, it's there, but there's an inability to bring it out and express it freely. And if there's some stressful aspects, as I said, there could be some father-daughter complexities involved as well in the person's life. So look, she really represents quite a lot when you think about it. I've named quite a lot of things, and I'm really only scratching the surface here, because this is an introduction to get people curious, or to make people more aware of what Pallas Athena brings to the birth chart and therefore to our life. So powerful female leaders, for example, historically in our world are often seen to have a strong Pallas Athena. One particular person was Joan of Arc. Now we all have a pretty basic idea, at least, of her story and her victories and her triumphs and her challenges and all of that. Well, she had a very, very strong Pallas Athena in her chart. The other thing I wanted to say as well is when there's stressful aspects with Pallas Athena in your birth chart, it can also be an expression of mental creative blockages and mental health imbalances as well. And I guess, if we look at the world today, there's a lot of that going on. I work in that industry as part of some of the work that I do, and I work with mental health, and there is a lot of that going on. So a difficult Pallas can be one expression or one aspect of that as well. So Pallas Athene, on a more positive note, is that warrior goddess that gives us that creative intelligence, that warrior wisdom and courage to express and communicate and seek that equality and that justice and fairness in the world that we live in. She's a very, very powerful expression of the divine feminine. She's a bit of an androgynous figure because she's got a very strong sort of masculine energy about her as well, and the myth, I suppose, being the primary thing that her father Zeus, I mean, she was born just out of his head. There was no other person there. She wasn't born from two people. She was born from a man who was one of the gods, one of the highest gods, basically ruling all wisdom and truth. So that's what she carries. She carries that energy, and she brings it through with fearlessness and courage, and power and strength, and with a fight. That's why when you see her depicted, she's got an owl, one of her shoulders, can't remember which one, which is the whole representation of wisdom, and she's got the spear. So she's a real raw, powerful goddess. And in our own birth charts, when we tap into that energy, it's that ability that we can find within our own selves when we need that courage, that creative intelligence, tune into our healing potential powers, our artistry in whatever form that takes. So with those things, though, that would really be seen through the sign that she's in, the house that she's in, and the aspects that she's forming. So, for example, water signs such as Pisces, if Pallas Athena is in Pisces, that would be more of a reflection of somebody who's really clairvoyant and psychic and super intuitive and just really, downloading wisdom and spiritual vision from out of this world completely. So, psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient, all those sorts of qualities and powers. So yeah, it does depend on what sign she's in terms of how she's going to be expressed in your own life. So it is really good to know where she's located. I'll go on to Ceres now because I've spent far too much time talking about Pallas Athena only in the sense of this video wanting it to be about 30 minutes long. So Ceres is very different divine feminine principle, energy or expression to Pallas Athena. Ceres has a really dramatic story in terms of her mythology. Without going into the whole story, just to give you a snippet which should give you enough understanding of what she represents, because essentially she represents themes around loss, separation, loss, return, grief, things like that. So it's quite a heavy energy. But Ceres is the mothering principle, the nurturing principle, how we are, how we feel nurtured, mothered, or loved in our own life. So it's not just the moon that we look at when we're looking at these maternal, mothering, nurturing principles and qualities. Just going back to her myth, so she had a daughter named Persephone, or Proserpina, depending on where you read. As I said, there are Roman and Greek names. And she had a very special bond with her daughter. She was really overprotective of her daughter. She adored her. They went everywhere together. Ceres is the goddess of grain and agriculture. So she's connected to food, basically. So she would walk the fields with Persephone, and they would be filling the earth with all these beautiful grains and this food and nourishing it and nurturing it and all these things. And so they were very close, and they were always together. And out of the blue one day, Pluto, the planet Pluto, who is also known as Hades, Hades is the Greek name, he abducted Persephone, and he took her into what's called the underworld, which is really the unconscious, okay, that is within all of us. When she was abducted, Ceres went out of her mind. She was, it was the most catastrophic experience, the most hurtful, painful experience that she had to endure. She was in mourning, she was grieving for a very long time. And when she was going through this process of grieving and mourning the loss of her daughter, it was said that food and grains and agriculture, all of that just went dry, it went to nothing, which is very much connected to the seasons such as spring, summer, autumn, etc. That's another story. I don't want to unpack that too much right now. But in the story, what happens is that Pluto, Hades, agrees to return Persephone to her mother, Ceres, but only for a short period of time through the year. And as a result of that whole story, which is, there's much more to it, but I think you kind of get the gist. So there was an abduction. There was the abduction subsequently created the grieving, the loss, the pain, the suffering, all those things. And the return of her is what enabled grain and food to be returned back to the earth, as it were, so that the rest of us can actually live and continue to live and eat. So her story is very, very interesting, and it's very, very powerful. So she's the mothering, nurturing principle. She's connected to all women's issues regarding pregnancy, birth, menstruation, all those different cycles, all health matters and cycles relating to women, she represents. Pregnancy, miscarriage, abortion, all those things. So food and nourishment is a primary theme with Ceres. So to give you an example, and I've seen this in some chart readings that I've done through the years, when somebody has a really difficult Ceres, that is, she's in a difficult sign, difficult house, and difficult aspects, well, it can be many different things, but what I'm specifically about to refer to is an eating disorder. Ceres would be the thing that you would look out for people who had eating disorders, the various facets of eating disorders, that is. She's also something to look to when you're wanting to see the relationship between the person's chart, the person that you are having this reading with, the relationship that they have with their parents. Could be the father as well, not just the mother, or it can be one or the other or both, depending. It depends on every person and every person's chart, because everyone's got a different story. But parenting issues, lack of nurturing principles, attachment issues, lack of attachment, blended family, extended issues, all relate to Ceres, the principle of Ceres, the asteroid goddess Ceres. She also would point to self-worth and self-esteem issues as well, which I think would tie in very closely with food disorders. So therefore, if she's very well placed in the birth chart, she doesn't have stressful aspects to her, she's potentially going to operate on a more healthier level, which would basically be a person who has very healthy self-worth, self-esteem, has had the nurturing, mothering principle really activated and positive in their life. They really received a lot of nurturing and things like that. So, mothering and parenting issues are not just the sun and the moon, because normally we look to the sun as describing, apart from our own personality and other things about us, it also describes our father, and it also describes the men in our life, as a woman, that is. And the moon will always be looked to as the feminine principle within our own selves, the mother, and the female connections that we make as well. So sun, father, moon, mother, but Ceres brings a whole new level to the experience of parenting. So she's really, really primary, really, really important in the birth chart. And of course, when there are transits happening with the asteroids, I have to be honest, out of out of the 4 asteroids, which is Pallas, Athena, that I've touched on, Ceres, that I've touched on, and the other 2, which I'll do in my next video, which is Vesta and Juno, out of those 4, in terms of transits, what shows up very, very clearly, Ceres and Juno transits. Pallas, Athena, and Vesta tend to be a little bit more obscure, and that's just what I've observed. But when it comes to Ceres and Juno, they're actually quite powerful in terms of what they show. I've looked at a man's chart who was handed divorce papers on the day that he had a Juno return. What does a Juno return mean? What it means is this: wherever Juno was located in his chart at the time of his birth, date of birth, place of birth, as that Juno continued to transit, move around in his chart, at this particular stage in this man's life, he happened to be having what's called a Juno return. So she returned back to her natal position in his birth chart. The actual day that he had the Juno return, he was handed divorce papers, and he was quite surprised. He wasn't expecting it. So that's just one manifestation. But I haven't even talked about Juno yet, so perhaps I'll just leave that aside. But with Ceres transits, unfortunately, the things that I have seen haven't been very pleasant. They have been very painful issues around grief, loss, rejection, separation, things like that. So it could be parents being separated from their children. It could be the other way around. So yeah, it's Ceres transits, unfortunately, not that easy. But again, that would depend on what Ceres is doing in your own chart. So if she's difficultly placed in your chart, then a Ceres return or Ceres transits are going to mirror that difficulty that's inherent within her location of your actual birth chart. So there's a lot of things to consider and to look at when you're looking at transits, when you're looking at progressions, when you're looking at Fidario periods. These are all methods, astrological methods, in delineation with regards to what's happening in a person's life, whether it's looking at the present moment or whether it's looking at the future ahead or whether it's looking at the past. So that's the beauty of astrology. You can go back, you can look right now, and of course you can look to the future as well. It's very, very powerful. So I think I will leave it there now. Just one last point on Ceres. So yeah, I think I did say this, but in case I didn't, if she has good harmonious aspects in your birth chart, the parenting, nurturing principle flows for you, whether it's in regards to the relationship you had with your parents, or even within your own self as a parent, if you are a parent or if you're going to become one. And the stressful aspects will really mirror and reflect the conflicting nurturing needs that lie dormant, that actually haven't been met, and how the stress brings those up and therefore is projected onto relationships. Remember, we spoke about the ascendant-descendant relationship principle axis that describes our world of relationships in all the various facets that we experience it. Like I said, life is relationships. We are relating all the time on every single aspect, on every single level. By the way, that reminds me, it's probably important to mention this because it's part of the mental conceptual faculty. Given we've spoken about Pallas Athena as that creative intelligence, Mercury and sign Gemini, and Sagittarius and the planet Uranus as well. Another thing to pay attention to is when you've got planets in the third house and they're aspecting the ascendant and descendant. That's really, really important because the third house is the house of communication. It's also the house of siblings and lots of other things as well, like early schooling and neighbours and a whole bunch of other stuff. But primarily it's the house of communication. When we've got a planet in there and it is actually connecting to the angles, the ascendant and the descendant, that planet, it's like that planet is plugged in, and imagine just two tunnels just being released like that to the ascendant and the descendant, and that energy of that planet in the third house releases its energy to the ascendant and descendant. So in other words, the whole relationship access, how that person first of all perceives life and the world, and how they perceive their partner, their potential partner, business, personal, is filtered through the planet in house number 3, because the planet in house number 3 is squaring, what we call squaring the angles, okay? That's just a really important thing to pay attention to when someone has a planet in the third house and it is actually squaring those angles. Okay, so I think I'll leave it there. I just wanted to bring in some of that divine feminine energy. I know that Ceres hasn't been a bundle of joy to discuss, but nevertheless we can't avoid these experiences and aspects of life because they are here. They are here for us to experience and endure and learn from. And you know, in life there's we've got yin and yang, we've got night and day, we've got girl boy, we've got black white. You know, we're living in this world of duality, as it were, particularly in this 3D world. So these differences are present for us to actually grow through and have our evolutionary our soul's evolutionary progression take place. So nothing is accidental. Everything is there for a purpose, and certainly we can transcend these energies and transmute them as well. Astrology is not suggesting that we are doomed, but as long as we remain unconscious, we project our whole astrological chart out there. So whatever our chart looks like, it's projected out there onto the world, and then it becomes what we see, and we think that's what the world is, but that's really our own projection from our actual birth chart. So you see, that's why the more we are unconscious and unaware, the more we are projecting. So the more awareness and consciousness we integrate into our psyche, our soul, our personality, all the different dimensions and facets of who we are, we can transcend energies and we can transmute things, and we come and operate from different frequencies. So all these things are possible, but on a mundane basic level, this is what Ceres represents, and also Pallas Athena. So there's more to come. Stay tuned. As I said previously as well, if you have any questions or comments, I always welcome questions or comments. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope you found this talk interesting. And I'll be back next time with Juno and Vesta, the Vestal Virgins, and Juno, the primary principle of soul commitment is what I like to call it. Probably talk about Black Moon Lilith as well, And I know that I said in my previous video I was going to look at Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley's chart. I still intend to do that, but today I was inspired to talk about the goddesses, so that's what I've done. Okay, thanks for watching. Blessings. Bye for now.